Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Dr. Michael Stanton, and I'm here with you. We'll do introductions in just a minute, but we're from the UNM Law School for the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program, ECHO, and we have a very exciting and a very full agenda and orientation for us as we begin this very unique opportunity for professional learning and collaborative problem solving through our case-based learning of ECHO. We're going to have introductions, and before we do that, I'd like to start with our introductions with our IT and network coordinator.
Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Arwayas, and I'll be available via chat. You can see tech support and also my name if you need to chat with me for any problems or technical support throughout this, and also during the week if you want to troubleshoot or ask me any questions. One quick thing that I do want to ask of everybody for attendance, if you wouldn't mind using the chat window now and putting in your name and your email address, I'd appreciate it.
Great. A couple, before we continue with introductions, a couple kind of announcements here at the beginning as we get started, and we really appreciate everybody joining us. Just remember that Zoom, if you haven't used Zoom before, it has a great chat window. You look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see, looks like Betty's found it, so thank you, Betty. We appreciate that. And you could just have that open, and especially as we go through the presentation today, and you've got a question you want to, you don't want to stop or slow down the presentation, just go ahead and jot the question into the chat window, and we'll use that, and we'll kind of respond verbally a little bit later. Also, as we use the Zoom technology as we are today, and as we move into our ongoing ECHO sessions beginning in April, when we follow the process of just kind of raising, kind of waving your hand and introducing yourself, your name and where you're calling from. That would be great. And then finally, is wherever possible, please use your cameras. One of the beautiful things of ECHO and this network model that we'll be talking more about a little bit later is the opportunity for us to really kind of be elbows on the table without being around the same table. If we can visually see each other, and there's some really exciting and unique opportunities that happen and can happen when we do that. So I would encourage you to please find that camera icon. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom program next to the microphone button, you'll see the stop video. It may have, your program, Zoom, when it started, may have come automatically with the line through that. If you just click on that, that'll activate your video camera for us. And if you're having a bad hair day, that's okay. But we really do want to be able to see you, and we won't have a problem with that, okay? So anyway, let's go on with the introductions, starting on my left.
Hi, I'm Leslie Jones. I am one of the attorneys who was part of the pilot project for this program in Sandoval County, and I am now the lead attorney or attorney mentor for the program.
My name is Caitlin DeFiore. I'm one of the 2 lead social workers for the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program.
Thank you. And a couple other things before we get started in terms of kind of etiquette for the webinar. Go ahead and keep your microphone muted if you could. I know this is the lunch hour, and we're hoping that you're able to take advantage and have your lunch in between clients or cases or meetings, and that's fine. And then also be sure to, let's see, there's going to be time, this is especially with the smaller group here, we'll have time for questions, clarification, comments from all of us today. So please be sure to join in, and we'll have time throughout to do that. The topic, before we get started, let's go ahead and do introductions, starting with Dominica. If you would like to unmute and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dominica Montano. I'm the Clinical Services Coordinator for the 13th Judicial District, and I was one of the original social workers with the pilot project.
Thanks, Dominica. Corey, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Corey Griffith. I am the program manager for the Family Advocacy Program as of mid-January. So hello, and I'm here at the AOC in Santa Fe.
Thanks, Corey. Hi, Christy. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Christy Fields. I am a lead social worker for NMFAP along with Caitlin.
Thanks, Christy. And Diana, would you like to unmute with *6 on your phone and introduce yourself, please?
Hopefully you can hear me. This is Diana Llewellyn, and I'm one of the attorneys who does various and sundry different things. At one time, I was very active in abuse and neglect. I'm working in both the 13th and the 2nd Judicial District at this point.
Thank you, Diana. We're glad you're here. Betty, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself, please? So Betty, if you see that microphone icon, just click on it and it should unmute yourself there. We will come back. She doesn't have her microphone or camera hooked up.
Yeah, she said she doesn't have a camera connected, but she could hear us earlier. So.
Okay. We're glad you're here, Betty. Thank you. Renee, would you like to unmute and introduce
Hi guys,
yourself?
it's Renee Richards Charney. I work primarily in the 2nd, but also I do work in the 10th. I actually didn't know if I should be here today since I did the orientation in the fall, but I didn't know if you might have some new information.
Yes, we are glad you're here. We'll have some new information, especially in the second half of our presentation today around the ECHO model for you. So hang in there, Renee. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Brian, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself, please? Looks like Brian just got on and is getting organized and situated. We're glad you're here, Brian and Betty. Don't forget to use chat to introduce yourself with your name and email so that we have it. And finally, Jen, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Vieira. I work for the AOC, and I assist Corey and Sarah Jacob and everybody else in implementing the new program.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks for all that you do. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn this section of the presentation over to Leslie.
Hi, everyone.
While you're
Let's
introducing yourself, I will get this going.
Get this going. So Renee, this may be, I mean, I think a fair amount of this will be things that you've heard before, and hope is that you'll hang in with us and be able to contribute your experience with the program as we go through the presentation.
Almost there, sorry. Let me move this up out of the way. Okay.
Okay. All right. So the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program is a model for representation of respondent parents and guardians in abuse and neglect cases. It uses an interdisciplinary approach with a team comprised of an attorney, a social worker, and or a parent mentor working together. We rely on each other's specialized skills, training, and knowledge to advocate for the stated legal goals of our clients.
Sorry. There you go.
So the core values of the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program are dignity, compassion, and respect. And one of the things we do want to emphasize is that we want to maintain those values as we work with our clients, but also as we work with each other in court, in meetings, and through this program, as we have additional trainings and as we interact through the ECHO program, that we maintain those values with each other as well. New Mexico Family Advocacy Program is committed to the principles of cornerstone advocacy as developed by the Center for Family Representation in New York. At the end of this part of the materials, there's a brief summary of cornerstone advocacy, and we'll go through that at the end there. So for the attorneys, appointment and referral to New Mexico Family Advocacy Program is done anytime after the petition is filed and the attorney is appointed. That attorney can then refer their client to the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program. It is only that attorney that can refer their particular client. You can't refer the other client in a case. The court can't appoint it, CYFD can't appoint it, but I do want to emphasize that often CYFD social workers will have really good information when you're trying to assess as an attorney whether this is a good case to refer to the program. They can have good information about whether or not this would be a good case to refer based on their assessment of the parent's abilities to work their plan. Once the referral is made, then the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program clinical team will decide whether or not to accept the parent into the program, and will assign either a social worker and or a parent mentor. And I'll let Caitlin talk about the criteria that the program uses for acceptance.
So at this time, we are using a criteria to assign cases to the program. That is probably going to change with the grants. We're not sure when that'll change, but right now the criteria is that we take cases that are left open less than 3 months, that have no prior TPRs, and that are not currently on probation for criminal child abuse. And kind of what we mean by that is parents who had a CYFD case, had a criminal case at the same time, and were placed on probation for a period of time, and then got their kids back, and then something else happens that is similar to that incident, and their children are placed back in custody. And it's not that we couldn't work with parents that have been through that experience, but it's just that takes a lot longer than 15 months to kind of address the underlying reasons why that happens.
So I also want to emphasize too that sometimes people think that you're going to refer your most difficult cases, parents that have developmental delays or cognitively impaired, things like that. It's important to remember that it's also a great referral. If you think you have a client that can get get their kids back quickly, the program can help that happen more quickly. We can get reunification happening faster for those parents. So it's also those strong cases, and it also has to be a parent who's present. So not somebody who's incarcerated in another state. That just won't work. It has to be a case where the social worker or parent mentor can face-to-face meet with the client, and the client can be actively involved in their case plan. So after the client is accepted into the program, it is the attorney's obligation to prepare and submit orders, because the social worker and the parent mentor are also independently contracted with the administrative office of the courts. Then there has to be a separate order allowing them to work in the case, because our cases are sequestered. So because we're not all housed in one agency, it's not an agency that's getting appointed, we need to have those separate orders entered, and the attorney needs to get those entered. And then there is also an affidavit for the social worker and the parent mentor to complete. The attorney needs to prepare that, get it signed by the social worker or parent mentor, then the attorney signs it and files that with the court clerk. These forms are available in the resource library for ECHO, for the ECHO program, but they're also for the attorneys that are on contract with the AOC in districts where we're already, where the program is already operating. They'll have access to the Dropbox file that has those forms of order as well. And it's important that those get used, that form of order. Those are the forms of orders and affidavits that have been approved by the judges and the AOC.
And I think I want to remind everyone that is currently working with the program to use the forms from Dropbox and not save it to your computer, because we change them
yes.
kind of regularly.
Kind of regularly. Yes, they do get changed. So it's also important for your attorneys to remember that the NMFAP social workers and parent mentors are part of your legal team and are covered by attorney-client privilege pursuant to NMRA 16-106. So that means that they can be included and should be included in those conversations where you're talking about the strategy for the case, what the client wants to accomplish in the case, and it can be particularly helpful when the client is struggling with something that we're not all ready for the department to know yet. That just to remember that bringing this FAP social worker and parent mentor into those conversations is really important, and you can reassure your client that they are also covered by attorney-client privilege. So the NMFAP social workers do a lot, and I'm going to let Caitlin talk about what they do.
So we do a lot of things in the cases that we have. We attend court hearings with parents. We attend CYFD meetings with the attorneys and parents. We communicate with providers that the parents may be seeing. The biggest piece of it that we do, though, is home visiting with parents, and through that, kind of how we describe it is clinical case management, and we're doing tangible tasks while having therapeutic conversations about things. So I may be working with a parent and taking them to the SSI office because they need to get a social security card to start a job on Monday. And we're having conversations while we're doing those things about, okay, so tell me, how are things going? And the parent may say, oh, you know, I relapsed last weekend. And so we're talking about kind of the things that triggered that, what was going on that happened. Do we need to set up an appointment to see your therapist, and kind of really working on those clinical things while we're doing the task of going to the SSI office. So we communicate pretty frequently with the attorneys as well about what's going on in the case, and kind of how we describe it to parents is it's a triangle where it's the attorney, ourselves, and the parent, and then I guess maybe a square with a parent mentor as well, but that we communicate information freely inside of that, and then we as a team decide what gets shared outside of that.
I'm also going to let Caitlin talk about what the parent mentors do, the family advocacy program parent mentors do.
So at this time, we only have one parent mentor for the program. We're hoping to have some more soon. But the parent mentor does attend court hearings with parents. She attends CYFD meetings with parents. She works on some of the same things that we do, such as like finding housing, helping parents get to appointments, having conversations about substance use. But parents are more likely to tell our parent mentor things that they're never going to tell us, because she has a different understanding of the system and how it feels to have your kids not with you.
So I'm going to say from an attorney perspective, I would say that some of the biggest things that for the attorney, the social worker and parent mentor do is help me to understand my client's needs better so that I can advocate more effectively for them. It's their training for the social workers, their training, their expertise in mental health that they can then do a better job than I can of figuring out how to communicate with the client. Got clients oftentimes with mental health diagnoses, with substance abuse, all kinds of issues, in addition to that they've been through this huge trauma of having their kids removed. And so reaching them can be difficult, and especially reaching them as an attorney with all of the language we use, the acronyms, all of the talk about process, and having the social worker there to help me do that or translate what I'm saying to the parent is extremely helpful. And also for the parent mentor, that they have an insight that I simply can't have. I have not been there, they have. And so their ability to be a buffer between me and the department, me and the court system, to help the parent manage through those things is extremely helpful as an attorney. NMFAP social workers and parent mentors do appear in court. We usually sit at the same table. They are part of our legal team. Usually the parent is sitting between us, and the attorney introduces both the client and the social worker and or parent mentor. And part of that so that we're really clearly communicating to the court that they're part of our team. And that's what they're there for, is to be part of the team and support this parent. So I'll let Caitlin talk a little bit about what social workers or parent mentors may do in the hearing.
So as Leslie said, we are at the counsel table with the client and the attorney. Some of the things that we do is kind of explain what's happening in the courtroom to clients as it's happening, so that the attorney is able to focus on what is being discussed, the legal arguments that are being made, questions that they may need to ask. We also do a lot of prep work for clients before court hearings to make sure that they have ways to manage their anxiety, because for almost all of our clients, court is a very anxiety provoking thing, that they're going to be in front of this judge, the judge is going to hear the things that they're doing or not doing, and they don't really get an opportunity to speak except through their attorney in most cases. And so that can cause a lot of anxiety for clients. So we work on before court, how are you going to manage that anxiety, and in court managing that anxiety, so that the attorney is able to have the time to do the legal piece of it.
And so that the parents' questions are answered, yes, without interrupting, if the attorney's listening to cross-examination or direct examination and trying to figure out what they're going to ask on cross-examination, for example. Okay, so also family advocacy program social workers and parent mentors work closely with CYFD. And so I'll let Caitlin also talk about that, the kinds of things that they do with CYFD.
So we do a lot of things with CYFD. We attend home visits with clients and CYFD for the required visits with clients. We talk about treatment plans, and we include the attorney in this obviously as well, and make sure that appropriate services are in place for clients. So Leslie and I may have a client that has a cognitive delay, and CYFD may want them to participate in a substance abuse group. But we know for people that have cognitive delays that group settings aren't really as conducive to learning. And so finding the appropriate services so that clients can be successful in working their treatment plans. In Sandoval County, we also do biopsychosocial assessments for the department, and it's worked out pretty well there because clients are more willing to tell us things that they're not willing to tell the department. The client always knows that this information is going to be given to the department, and once the assessment is complete, I review it with the client, and then we review it with the attorney, and then it's given to the department. So you're always going to have the information before the department has it. We also work to try to identify family members that could be placements for the kids with the department and with the client, or that could possibly be visit hosts so that the family can see their children more.
Okay. So from the attorney's perspective, one of the important things always with the family advocacy program, social workers and parent mentors and their interaction with CYFD is to make sure that it's all documented. So it may take some, I mean, we're all learning through this process, but it can take some reminders that emails, reports, anything that is shared really needs to be shared with the entire team, and there needs to not be communication directly between CYFD and the social worker and parent mentor that's not copied then to the parent's attorney. We don't want to have surprises when we show up for staffing or for court, and so that's really important. As we said, that since the social worker is part of the team and the parent mentor is part of the team, there are going to be times when CYFD is not going to, when our team is going to have information, the social worker or the parent mentor is going to have information about the client that is privileged, and CYFD doesn't have that, and that can be an adjustment for CYFD, that they don't understand why it is that the social worker, who's a social worker, right, should be on the same side they are, can't disclose that information. So social workers are mandated reporters under New Mexico law. And so bottom line is they have to be as concerned about safety as CYFD is, as we all are.
And if there's an incident that we do have to make a Sky report or call the police or anything like that, we notify the attorney as soon as possible that that is happening, so that they're aware of it and it's not like an afterthought where CYFD knew about it before they did. Sometimes we have to call before we call the attorney just based on circumstances, but the attorney always knows when that happens.
But sometimes what's difficult is making that differentiation. So from our perspective, we may have a parent who's had a relapse, but if that doesn't place the kids at risk of imminent harm, we're not going to report that. We're going to do some crisis management. We're going to do some planning. We're going to make sure that the kids are safe. If we can't do that, then yeah, we might have to disclose and report. But first, we're going to figure out how we can keep moving forward in the treatment plan without having to disclose until after we've developed a plan to address it.
Yes.
Okay, so FAP social workers and paramentors also work with the community service providers. One of the important things is that they get releases of information to the service providers so that the attorney, the social worker, a parent mentor can all get information from and give information to the service provider, the therapist, et cetera, and that is signed, a release signed by the client.
Yes, and it includes the attorney on the release too, I think now, so that you guys have that information as well and can communicate with the service providers.
And one of the big things for me too, with and most helpful things, is having the social worker when there's an evaluation that gets done. We've all gotten those psychological evaluations that are full of language that even for us sometimes is not entirely clear, but also sometimes with really difficult things for the parent to hear in terms of diagnosis or assessment. Also with things about their ability to learn, their learning style. And so it's been a tremendous help to be able to have the social worker as a clinician be able to review that evaluation or progress reports with the parent so that they better understand what it is that's going on, that's being asked of them, why they're being asked to do certain things, and to frankly reassess maybe treatment modalities if we need to.
And something else that we do on the cases that we have is we try to get reports from service providers prior to FCMs and court hearings and share that information with the attorney so that we're all informed going into that meeting about what the client's doing or is not doing on their plan.
Again, they're going to work with community providers to get the right treatment modality, and that's an important thing. And then also attending provider meetings. Sometimes the social worker or parent mentor will attend a provider meeting, like when we've got the PB&J, time limited reunification. They will interact with that provider as well. Sometimes attend those visits, especially initially, just to get the parent comfortable with having that provider in their home or other in-home home providers, and they can do that as well. So it really is a change in attorney practice to use this model. And starting from the beginning, where after the client's been accepted in the program, it's really important for the attorney, and sometimes this is hard to do, but with the social worker and or the parent mentor to sit down with the client, talk about what it is that they want from, want from the case. And of course, 99.9% of the time it's reunification. So identifying issues, concerns, priorities, possible barriers to success. And then go through the legal case and discuss how that goes, the progress of the legal case. And so you're counseling your client about how the legal case goes as process, and then having the social worker or parent mentor there to really talk about what does that mean in real terms? What does that mean in terms of their day-to-day life? What are they looking at now, next week? I think, Caitlin, if you want to talk about one of the issues that we deal with parents in custody hearings, almost always.
Yeah, so we like to get cases at custody hearings because we find that the earlier we start working with parents, the better the results are. And custody is a unique time because all the parents that we have ever worked with go into custody hearings thinking there's a chance I'm going to get my kid back today and my kid's going to go home with me. And as we know, doing this work, that rarely happens. And so if we can walk out of that hearing with that client and have a conversation about the next steps they can take, get them engaged sooner, they're more likely to be successful. And to know that someone is on their side and that they have someone they can call when things are bad.
Right. Want to emphasize again the whole issue of communication. A lot of these parents, they've been through a lot of rough things. Again, they may have mental illness issues, they may have substance abuse issues, they may very well and reasonably have major trust issues. So keeping that communication going is really important so that we are all sharing the same information so that we interact better with the department, we're better advocates, but also to lessen the opportunity for the client to split the team and be telling us, the social work, the FAP social worker something, telling me something else, telling the CYFD social worker something else. But being able to communicate really lessens the opportunity for that and increases the opportunity for having kind of genuine discussions with the client about what is it that's going on, and for the clinician to be able to say, figure out what is it that's really, what is the need that's being expressed here that maybe the rest of us are missing. That additional information about a client's mental health or substance abuse issues can point the attorney to the need for increased advocacy. It's kind of easy to say if you don't know and don't understand what's going on with your client, but once you do, I think that we need to be aware that there is a heightened obligation then. We're aware of our client's needs. We need to be doing that advocacy, whether it's in court or out of court. We need to be doing that advocacy, asking for whatever the services are that our client needs, the assistance that our client needs to be successful. It may also implicate NMR 16-114, which is the rule regarding dealing with a client with diminished capacity. And we always need to be aware of that. Sometimes people with psychological or developmental issues or with substance abuse issues are not operating as though they have full capacity or with full capacity. And we need to be aware that we still have that obligation to treat them as much as possible as though they are operating with full capacity. But again, that gives us also the reliance. We're able to rely on the social workers for additional insight into that. I often say it allows us to sort of step back. A lot of us, especially those that have been doing this work for a long time, we sometimes put ourselves in the position of trying to be a pseudo social worker, trying to figure this stuff out. And we can really step back from that and focus on legal advocacy when we're working as part of a team. Sharing of information is important. It also comes with obligations on the part of the attorney to ensure that that information is, number one, shared in an appropriate way, but also is protected. So the FAP program uses Dropbox to share client files. We often use email to share client information. It's also important to remember that as an attorney, you have an obligation to make sure that those files are secure, that they can't be accessed. So we need to take reasonable steps to prevent inadvertent or unauthorized disclosure of client information. It's important to remember that that working as a team, that being part of NMFAP with social workers and parent mentors for the attorney does not relieve the assigned attorney of his or her obligations under the Code of Professional Conduct, the Children's Code, or the performance standards in his or her contract with the AOC. So it doesn't mean we get to step back and let the social worker do all the work. We need to be doing our jobs as well. And frankly, this allows us to be more active as legal advocates because we're getting better information and not having to spend as much time with the kind of social issues that, or day-to-day issues that our clients may be dealing with. It also does not relieve the Children, Youth, and Families Department of its obligation to make reasonable efforts to assist parents with their treatment plans. In other words, you don't get to go to court and the FAP social worker has done all this work for the client, and CYFD stands up and says, yeah, look at all this stuff that's been done, even though we haven't done any of it. They still have to make their reasonable efforts to assist the parents in their treatment plans.
And I think in the counties that we've been doing this in the longest, especially Sandoval County, we are pretty good about knowing what the department is obligated to do and navigating that with them, especially with the supervisors that we've worked with for a while, know that what their staff still needs to do, and we make it work.
But sometimes, yeah, when it's been introduced, when you're dealing with social workers who aren't familiar with the program yet, they might mistake that as having fulfilled their obligation. So we do feel very strongly that the Family Advocacy Program works to achieve better outcomes and shorten time to permanency. So we do it by providing better, more effective advocacy, by empowering parents, by increasing their engagement in treatment plans, for advocating for relevant and customized treatment plans, and for advocating for frequent visitation, for involvement of relatives in placement and visitation. But when things don't work out, the program is also able to help parents see a way to accepting permanency elsewhere when that's possible. And I'll let Caitlin talk about that a bit.
So when we do our biopsychosocial assessment with the client at the beginning of the case, we also do a genogram, which is kind of like a family tree. And it displays like connections and things like that, of that nature as well. And so we talk to parents about finding family members that can be involved, whether that's being a placement for kids, being a visitation host. Those are some of the things that we do, and especially towards the end of cases that are maybe not going to go to reunification, we have those conversations again about, okay, I know that you don't like Aunt Sally and that Aunt Sally's not involved, but could we see if Aunt Sally would be willing to have your kids, because it's Aunt Sally or a stranger.
Okay, so the next portion is, we're going to talk about Cornerstone, but I wanted to pause for a minute and see if anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask. Anybody, like Renee, you've worked with the program, any comments you wanted to make about how you've seen any of this stuff work? I'd love to hear from you. And it looks like we've had somebody else join.
I think that's the problem. It was a phone number call.
I think it might be me. I'm Andrea.
Welcome, Andrea.
So
Hey,
thanks for asking, Leslie. I think that in terms of what I've seen work with the program is, I do think that it is helpful to have that insight, that social work background that from your program, because we really don't even always get that from CY social workers. So I think that is valuable. One of the things I'm most nervous about, and I really hope that maybe we can talk about that a little bit later in today's program, is the idea of the communication with CYFD. I think as an attorney working on these cases for a long time, we get used to controlling the message and sort of also branding it the way we want to brand it. And quite frankly, that space between hearings is awesome time for us a lot of times, because we can, I don't want to say hide from CYFD, we're not hiding them, but we can minimize information that gets to the department, especially that negative information that we know can turn around in a way. And so I'm hoping that you can suggest a way to ensure that the communication that's going back and forth between this FAP social workers and the department is on brand for what I think what we've decided on the case. And so I think as an attorney, that's sort of hard to let go of, but also like such a welcome relief to have like another fighter on our side. But I guess that's one of the things I've really been struggling with, because I think when it works well, I think it works really well. But when I don't know, I tend to have a lot of anxiety around
So
it.
if I could address that a little bit, and really, so much of that comes down to communication and having regular and frequent communication with the FAP social worker. When we go for long times, that we know that there's been communication, the social worker has been working with the client, with CYFD, and there can be information that's not getting shared. So one is just those frequent reminders that emails have got to be copied. So emails from the social worker to the department, emails from the department to the social worker, the attorney needs to be copied on those. The other is remembering to use Dropbox effectively. The social, I guess I'll let Caitlin talk about that. They're required to document, and it's our obligation as attorneys to check that documentation and read through those client contacts to see what's going on.
So we do document things in Dropbox that we have done with the client in our contact log. The other piece of it, though, is that we try to communicate with the attorneys regularly through phone calls, emails. Hey, here's a quick update, Leslie, about what your client has done recently or what your client is not doing right now. So we try to do that as well. And
this is Christy Fields. I want to add something actually. So Renee, another thing that we do sort of like before court hearings, I mean, the social worker certainly should be going over the court report and sending you an email saying, hey, I read it. These are the things that I agree with. These are the things that I have some questions about that we need to talk about. And the second piece is I want to make sure that if you run into any issues, because we're a team and we talk about that and where the case is going. And if you're running into any issues in terms of, I heard you talk about fielding the information that goes to CYFD, is absolutely talk about that directly with the social worker. And then there's also different levels, right? There's lead social workers, there's Caitlin and I, there's Leslie, who's the attorney mentor. So if there's any issues, there's an avenue for attorneys and social workers to go and kind of flesh that out. Because we are a team and we want to work this case together and everybody be on the same page.
Okay, thank you. And I think that in terms of the social workers and the job that they're doing, I think all of the social workers in the program that I've worked with do an excellent job about communicating with me. I guess what I have seen a little bit is that division where then the client contacts me directly and says, oh, but the FAP social worker says this. And, oh, I didn't say, or, poor respondents, but they do. They hear one thing from CYFD, like, for instance, your drug tests look great. If you don't test you only have good results for the next 4 months, we'll stop them. But what they only hear is we're stopping your drug, your drug screens. So I think that, and I don't know if it is like a meeting between all the parties, like once a month. I love the pre-perm conferences in FCM because we're all on the same page. But I think that the social workers do a great job of communicating and letting me know information. I think it's that, and then I'm able to communicate with them really well. It's just that client component where maybe it is like a sit-down meeting, but I didn't realize there were notes in the Dropbox, so that's excellent. Thank you for letting me know that. Because then I can verify everything that's been said to my clients when I wasn't there, because I get a lot of like that splitting, your kids do that. Mom said this, Dad, let me go. I feel like I get that every once in a while from my clients. Like, well, they told me this, and I'm thinking, I just talked to them yesterday. I don't think
yes.
Okay, great. I'll verify. I didn't realize there were notes in that. I'm not great at Dropbox.
And that's why it's important too that we're all communicating together. And so like if I have a client with Leslie, that I'm letting Leslie know, hey, these are the things that have come up. This is what, if CYFD said something to me in passing, this is what happened. And that we're communicating so that clients aren't able to triangulate things between different members of the team.
I mean, we've had almost that exact conversation where our client is saying, is telling me that Caitlin said this, and they're telling Caitlin that CYFD said this, and it's just like completely different, and sometimes not even intentional, but what they're hearing in terms of their compliance, what it is they're supposed to be doing, what they have or haven't done. They can hear something different from people, and again, so having that communication is really important. I think was there somebody else who said they wanted to say something? Were there any other questions or comments right now before we move on? Okay. All right. So then we're just going to do a real quick run through of Cornerstone Advocacy. And as I said, you all have this in your materials elsewhere, actually, but you also have it in the resource library here. These slides are in the resource library about Cornerstone. And so we do focus on, heavy focus on the first 60 days to really get the case moving in the direction of reunification, heavy focus on visiting, using visit hosts whenever we can, if there are relatives, community members, church members, people from school, people from the kids' soccer team, wherever that can be visiting hosts. And that is something that we have really found that initially there was some resistance to, but that as we've gone along, there's been an increased acceptance to the point that CYFD has actually developed protocols for the visit hosts, and we've been able to get a lot more and more natural visitation. Again, working on placement, as Caitlin talked about really getting better information from parents about family members and possibilities for placement, but even in the community, placements in the community where they are able to maintain those connections, having appropriate services, and then doing that out of court advocacy in conferences. And there is nothing that says you cannot request a staffing. You may not get it. I find I get frustrated sometimes by requesting staffings, and instead what I get is a series of emails explaining why it can't happen. But that doesn't mean you don't ask and still push for those out of court conferences. Again, working heavily in the first 60 days to try to get the case going. And so then each of these just talks a little bit more about those principles for why we're working on these particular issues in the first 60 days, and why they're so important for kids to maintain their connections to their parents, to maintain their connections to their communities, and that doing that, you want a placement that is supportive of reunification. And again, if you've got services that are not appropriate to meet your parents' needs, it makes it harder for them to comply. They don't see the reason for doing them. They're not as motivated. They may drop out, as opposed to services that they can see the benefit of. They can see gains for themselves by engaging in those services. And then again, out of court advocacy in conferences. And as Renee mentioned, I mean, the pre-permanency conference is there, but often that means we've gone for 5 months from the time we've been in court until that pre-perm conference happens. And so can always ask for additional conferences, and if you are feeling like it's really important that happen and CYFD doesn't do it, you can always request a hearing. And then again, to visiting and having visiting be as frequent as possible, as natural as possible for the families. So I think that's it, unless there are any other questions right now about Cornerstone. No? Okay. So then I'm going to hand this over to Mike, who's going to talk about ECHO and how the future of these sessions with ECHO.
Thanks, Leslie. Thank you, Caitlin. Great job. I am not a lawyer or a social worker, although my brother was very much a similar lawyer and attorney working with families and children in El Paso for many, many years. And my wife is the director of a service provider here in town. So I'm quite connected. I'm a retired high school principal. I was the founder of Next Gen Academy here in Albuquerque. And over the last 3.5 years, I've worked on a number of special projects around the state and around the country, and became involved in something that we've been calling ECHO. It's not the word echo, although it's sometimes, echo, echo, like the game, but ECHO actually stands for expanding the capacity for health outcomes. And for some of you who may be here in the New Mexico, the central New Mexico area may have heard of UNM's Health Science Center ECHO project that was allowing the expanding the use of technology. And these ECHO sessions have been that we've developed, and we're getting ready to initiate with you following this orientation in April, is very much suited for developing expertise. So we're going to, over the next few minutes, be able to kind of give you that overview and how ECHO will help improve your knowledge, especially of this unique interdisciplinary practice that Renee, you were giving some great examples of some of the opportunities for professional learning that participating within the capacity of our ECHO sessions so in the weeks and months ahead will really help you. And to help understand more about some of the parent advocacy skills and knowledge needs, we'll have service providers included here. So there'll be more of an expansion of an understanding of where some of our clients can be able to go. And this concept of what we call learning from experts. I've gotten a chance over the last 4 months to get to know both Leslie and Caitlin, but Dominica and Christy and the expertise and the experience that we all have, that you all have, together is so powerful. And there's much to be learned and gained from all of us. So that's what ECHO is going to help amplify the amazing work that you're already doing. And again, that ECHO model was built by a physician out of UNM Health Sciences Center, who was a pioneer and visionary of saying, I can help develop the expertise around the state of practitioners and doctors and primary care doctors so that their clients, their patients, wouldn't have to drive all the way to Albuquerque, sit in the clinic to get treatment, and then have to get diagnosed and then come back every month for treatment when it came, in this case, to hepatitis C. So he invented ECHO, and it's using video conference technology. The Zoom system that you're using today will be our best friend in the weeks and months ahead, sharing these best practices. And you've gotten an idea today in this deep dive orientation of the amazing opportunities and capabilities of the knowledge of this unique project together and program. The concept of case-based learning is also unique. Now, in the case-based learning is being able, as adults, we learn very well this way, not necessarily looking at a particular client as a case all the time, but taking challenging, complex dilemmas in the process. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. You'll see how that will look in our ECHO sessions. And as always, really collecting data to monitor outcomes. Corey and Caitlin and others will be working with evaluators in this unique program to really collect the data and see how are we doing? How are our clients doing? Are the number of reunifications going up? Is our length of time to conclusion of a particular case, is that being reduced, and other markers as we work together in the months ahead? ECHO builds a virtual community of practice. And Leslie, if you don't mind me stealing your comment the other day, what I do know of many of you as practitioners and lawyers is you're sole proprietors, like me as a consultant working together with your group. And I kind of miss going down the hall to meet with some of my fellow educators when I was at Next Gen Academy, maybe much like if you ever had the experience of working in a larger law office. And this gives you that opportunity to really kind of walk down the hall with us every couple of weeks and join us to kind of share some ideas, kind of get some new relevant information, and to kick some other ideas around with the folks in the group. This slide will kind of give you an idea visually, and also how this will be a collaborative model, collegial, and case-based discussions. Again, our partners in each bi-weekly ECHO session starting April 2nd will be folks from CYFD, judges and hearing officers, various content experts. Kristen is here, and she'll be presenting a little bit later in our schedule. Folks that you've met, from Corey and Jen and Dominica from the Administrative Office of the Courts, obviously the attorneys, social workers, and parent mentors. Now, there may be times where not everybody will be on the same network in the same session due to important information, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. The challenges that you're facing, as we said, you're sole practitioners, being able to have that opportunity to be sitting there in your office or at Flying Star with your headset on, or maybe in between meetings in your office, is to be able to have that opportunity to meet with others and to learn and continue your education and understanding. Getting that clinical information on a timely, relevant basis from social workers and service providers is also going to be very important and at the heart of this professional learning opportunity. And really learning how, as an interdisciplinary team, to talk to each other, to use each other's skills and expertise for the best outcome for that particular case and that family situation. Echo's technology, as you've seen today, is pretty simple. It's Echo. It's Zoom technology. You could be doing this, connecting from your laptop. You can, or your iPad, or your smartphone. You could be in a conference room, and I know we'll have some strategically placed conference centers where you, as a spoke, where you could be able to just kind of go in between meetings or at the court to be able to connect. You need a camera and microphone. I do want to reiterate, we'd love to see you, so please, please, please turn on your video cameras, especially when we're doing our case-based learning and have that opportunity for clarifying questions. There's no cost for any of this for you. And we'll come back to the resource library that Leslie mentioned and Caitlin, where that Dropbox for access for session tools and resources that will continue to grow, not just the forums that are in there, but each one of the workshops and presentations and additional resources will be there for you to draw back as your expanded law library goes. We'll talk more about this, but we find, in my experience over the last year and a half of taking that medical echo model into the field of education over the last year and a half, and now into this unique field of parent advocacy and reunification and family practice. There'll be some key things. Keep that camera going, use chat, be supportive, help each other. Think of each other as you all as your own spoke to this wheel of information where all teach and all learn. And we'll talk more about the opportunities to really make each other better and help our practice as we move forward. You'll see more resources, tools. You'll see links to websites and resources. Much of this will be made available through our Echo Network coordinator, Laura, who some of you have been chatting with, and she's our coordinator and tech guru here. And she'll be setting up that resource, continuing to add to the resource library. She'll be sending you also that bi-weekly invitation with links to how to log in to the Zoom session, as well as how to access the presentations and other forms and important materials and cases as well. So part one will be workshops. It won't be 45 minutes like ours or an hour today. Our workshops will be 15 to 20 minutes long. They'll be the 15 to 30,000 foot view with subject matter experts that you'll want to hear from that have that background, especially in our state of New Mexico with our unique culture and community. There'll be topics from our social workers in that area, as well as the clinical topics. And topics that we had 9 judges and hearing officers involved yesterday in learning about how they can take advantage of ECHO Family Advocacy Program ECHO sessions. Part 2 will be case-based learning. Again, not long, but about 30 minutes. We'll have 2 parts. We'll have case presentations that include more process or clinically driven issues, as you can see on the left. And then part 2 will be a little bit more focused on, again, with identifying information much more cleaned out or deleted, but still it'll be more what we call fact pattern learning. And we'll help sort through to make sure that participants at this part will not compromise the case and will be appropriate as well. So if a judge may be, possibly hear this case and be involved, if they are involved on the Zoom session, Laura and I will politely disconnect them from the session. Okay. The same with lawyers who may be representing different parties within a particular case, as well as CYFD as well. Thank you. So again, part 2 is that case-based learning. I'm going to take just a second because I don't want to take too much more time. If you get a chance, and hopefully you'll all have a chance to look through this slideshow presentation as well. But our case presentations are really simple, won't take more than a little bit of time to fill out. But think of these case presentations as just kind of a very quick, here's my driving question, my main concern that I'd like to get some further information and feedback. Here's what I've tried, some interventions. Here are some things that we're thinking about. Here's some background, just to kind of share that out. And it could be, again, each one of those 2 different types of programs. It may be, I need some advice communicating with my social worker. Or Renee, like you mentioned earlier, I'm really worried because I'm not getting the information I think I should be getting. And I just need some help. And that will be at the heart of the case, okay? So let me close this and go back to the slideshow. Our protocol is very simple. It's 3 or 4 minutes for the presentation, 5 minutes clarifying questions, recommendations. Laura and I will be taking down the notes so you can just really be focused and attentive. And again, this is a great opportunity for you all to be elbows on the table with us with your camera on, okay? It's like video or Hollywood Squares game. So ECHO is designed for the New Mexico Family Advocacy Program to really amplify and support your professional learning, your community of practice, your professional network to help your expertise become more simple and easy to access those resources and those experts. As we go further, you'll learn a little bit more of how the ECHO sessions can really be made for you. You will find the schedule of topics to be quite, hopefully, relevant. We've worked on those pretty carefully. There's still some edits and adjustments that we'll be making to that. But throughout the course of the rest of this calendar year, you'll find some great ideas that will help you in a variety of ways. There should be something for you in each one of the sessions. And again, our mantra is all teach and all learn, not just Leslie or Caitlin with the best answers all the time. It will be all of us sharing. And we look forward to sharing your expertise with us in our network. So with that, I'm going to catch my breath. Came close to our 1 o'clock stop, at least with my part. So let's kind of open it up for questions. Again, using Zoom, if you have your video camera button on, just hit the videos icon, and we've got a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, did I see something from Betty come up?
Are there any questions in the chat?
I thought I just saw something come up.
No, Christy left a while ago. And she's
No, but there was, I thought there was something that came up. Was that from you, Betty, about attending court?
Okay, let's see if we can go back into comments.
I don't know. It popped up on the screen there.
Betty, if we've lost your question, so if you would like to either unmute if your microphone's working, if not, oh, she sent it to me. Oh, shoot. Okay.
Oh,
Bear
that's
with
why
me
it
one
came up
second.
here.
All right. I'm almost there. Oh, there we go.
Okay, here we go.
There we go, Betty. Sorry about that. Betty is Mr. McDowell's legal assistant, and she attends all court hearings with him, and is unable to join us today. She asked if she would be able to also be a parent mentor.
So I'm going to say, I don't know that we've had that question asked before. I think that's something that we would have to talk about. I mean, are you talking about being a parent mentor on his cases, or as part of the program with being assigned to other cases? Are you talking specifically just for?
Yes, on his case.
Okay. So I think that's something we're going to need to take back, and we'll need to talk with Corey and Dominica and Christy and Caitlin and come up with an answer to that.
if you could send us your contact information, so that way we can let you know once we've discussed it.
Well, one of the advantages of using our ECHO framework is that we will be saving the chat and be able to follow up with that. And if we can't find the answer, like right now, it will be made available through the network, either in the resource library in general and or directly back with you. Okay, Betty?
She did say that she asked because she's pretty much doing
Right.
everything we talked about.
Right.
already.
I see that. I see that. So I think, was this, is that in the group or just in yours?
It's now to the group.
To the group. Okay, great. So we can take a look at that. And as I said, we can definitely talk with the program people and see what we can come up with.
But we're glad you're here all the way
Yes.
from Clovis. Thank you. Isn't
Absolutely.
technology amazing?
It is. It's
So we
great.
could now. So I think you win the world's record of yesterday and today, Betty. Of
Yes.
being the furthest
away.
The
Yes.
furthest away.
The most. That's great.
Any other questions before we close with a few last announcements and comments?
I know that you guys are based mostly out of the 13th and that you have an office in the 2nd, but are there periods of time when someone might be around, like, so we could drop in and, run things by, or should we just schedule things in advance always?
It's easier for us to have it scheduled in advance just because most of our work is done in clients' homes. So unless we're there for another court hearing, there's not a lot of time where we're in the office, but we would be more than happy to set up time with you.
Sure.
Renee.
And Renee, you can always reach out to me, email me, call me, text me, and if with any questions, and we can set up a time,
Yeah.
even if again, if it's by conference call, so that we can pull everybody together.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing really quickly that I forgot, if you could make sure that this email is added into your contacts, echnmfap@gmail.com. You'll be getting communication. Up till now, I know Corey and other officers of the court have been sending you emails from so that hopefully it doesn't go into your junk inbox. But for now, if you could make sure now that this email address is added into your contacts so that when Laura and I send you the invitations and follow-up information, that it does come into your inbox, okay? echnmfap@gmail.com. All right. So be sure to review that resource library. Again, the link is available to you through that email invitation that you received from us. And mark your calendars now for April 2nd, which will be our first ECHO session. As we described it to you today. Today was your deep dive into and a review, Renee, thank you, for the FAP program. And we really look forward to continuing our expertise and development. Look for that email and agenda and details to come to you on Monday, and we'll be meeting bi-weekly every other Tuesday, starting on Tuesday, April 2nd. Any closing thoughts, Leslie or Caitlin?
No, thank you for attending.
Yeah, thank you.
We thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.